Well, good morning to all of you. Or do we say good afternoon to all of you? I think it's just a few minutes past 12 o'clock. First, let me, at the outset, congratulate IESA for taking this initiative in having an event which is centered around the caption that you have is all about addressing this big gap that we have in electronic design industry. What I'm planning to do is spend next half an hour in getting a few thoughts of mine to you, and then if time permits, I'll be more than happy to take a few questions from you, from the audience. The first and the foremost is, as you see from, I'm sorry if there's seems to be a little more text than I like it to be, but primarily the challenge that we have in front of us today is that by 2020, the ESDM industry demand would be somewhere in the range of $40 billion. And the current projections are business as usual. If we continue to do what we are doing, the domestic industry will not scale anything beyond about $100 billion, give or take a few billion dollars. They're saying it probably would be $104 billion. So effectively, by 2020, we will have enormous amount of pressure on Indian exchequer to see that we can fund another $300 billion of imports. One way the government seemed to know this problem as much as any one of us here, or a little more than any one of us, and seem to think the way in which they can address this is to run this campaign called Make in India. We'll make everything in India is what they're saying. But I honestly believe it is much beyond Make in India. So therefore, I captioned my talk as just not Make in India today, but creating an ecosystem for a vibrant ESDM industry. And certainly what we need to have as an ESDM industry as we move forward is not what was the ESDM industry of the past, but it has to be the next generation ESDM industry. It has to be far, far different from what it has been so far. And why do I think that it's possible, or why do I have an aspiration that it has to be a next generation ESDM industry, is because today technology has become all pervasive, technology is all over the place, and as a result, it is feasible today to make sure that we could build the next generation ESDM industry in India. So if you look at the chart that's there, again, my apologies if you're not in a position to read it too well. Certainly what we believe is that there are a number of challenges in terms of doing electronics, whether it is innovation, it is to do with design and engineering, or manufacturing, or supporting them in India. And it primarily is driven by, the first and the foremost is the attractive sector economics. Actually, this slide shows that the cost of doing cost disadvantage in India is somewhere between 6 to 8%. But last night that I was having a chat with my good friend Manjunatha Hebbar, and Manjunatha sent me a report, and which came from ENY. Actually, they talk about a sectorial disadvantage of anywhere between 6 to 26%. So it is exorbitantly expensive to do this manufacture in the state in which we are as a nation. It is a combination of number of things. It could be duty, it could be manufacturing inefficiencies that we have, not having the proper supply chain, not having the certification, innumerable number of them, not having the right brand name, all of it. All of it cascades into a number that this country would have a disadvantage of anywhere between 6 to 26%. And certainly, a lot of effort being put in by the government at this point of time to improve the ease of doing business. But we're told that we have climbed only about 4 notches from what we were the previous year. Hopefully this year we'll see some more changes that will happen. But all the same, the government continues to have challenges. We were all together at an event hosted by DEIPP, which is the Department of Industrial Promotion and Procurement. And DEIPP did a startup event a couple of weeks back in New Delhi. And they talked about certainly saying that companies can also exit fairly easily. And that is a law which is stuck in the parliament right now. The Prime Minister himself made an announcement that there's a bankruptcy law 2015. We have now introduced it. But so long as it's not enacted, it doesn't mean anything to us. So therefore, the challenge we have, the second challenge is ease of doing business continues to be a big challenge for us. And the other third one is that we also have a very poor component manufacturing ecosystem for us. So we need to import components, and as a consequence of that, the cost, the time, and the availability becomes a challenge. As I said, supply chain is a big challenge for us. So not having the component manufacturing ecosystem, and the fourth one I have is very limited innovation. We'll talk about it a little more as we move forward. Innovation, to me, has to become a part and parcel of our culture. We need to start thinking about innovation as straight from our school days. How does that come in? That is one of the other limitations we have. And finally, some of you may agree, may not agree with me, but I think, we don't have an industry-ready talent at this point of time. The talent is there. Certain percentages of talent is readily usable by the industry, but a substantial part of it is not industry ready. We certainly believe that we also need to bring in a culture of making culture within the academic institution itself. The students have to think about, how do I make a new product? It's not just saying that, I can recan, put the same old wine into a new bottle and say, I finished my project report and I get my degree. But then what is it of good to him or to anybody for that matter? After having spent, say, 1.5 years as an MTech program, we've seen a number of MTech thesis papers. Very poor in quality. And that is, I think, largely because it's driven by this mindset which says, I need to finish the program, as opposed to, I need to learn. So therefore, the sum total of it is that what we are finding today is we have challenges from a number of areas. So therefore, by just saying with all these areas can be addressed by making one statement called Make in India, will not solve the problem. So I have a 4-stage process, which I believe is something which is essential. And the first one is that we need to innovate in India. And this innovation, why do we require at this point of time so importantly, is that it also is an opportunity that is coming our way because of technology disruption. Technology has not been so disruptive since we know in mankind. The changes are extremely rapid. Everything that we think about today as the best is not the best tomorrow. There's something more happening tomorrow. That gives definitely a challenge to existing players, but gives an opportunity for new players to come in with new devices, new solutions. So therefore, I think why do we need to innovate is because there's an opportunity out there. The second one is that today in India, with the 1.1 or 1.2 billion people that are there, we have to definitely make sure we have an inclusive society. We have to bring all the people who are out of the middle class system to into the system who will have the basic amenities to them. While I think to a certain extent we can always address saying that, we have had food, shelter, clothing, but health, hygiene, education, these are still big question marks in front of them. So if we want to bring inclusiveness to the people who are outside us, one way of making sure that happens is we need to bring in more amount of innovation to ensure that there is social needs of the larger public are met. The third one is that innovation is required because we all have margin pressures right now. And added to that, we also have a big middle class which is burgeoning. You look at the number of cell phones that are there in this country. I believe I've seen an article somewhere which says in India is only one nation where per person there's 1.5 cell phones. People don't have just the luxury of carrying one with them, but they have twos, and I've even seen people with 3 cell phones. Incoming calls, outgoing calls, it says a different plan, different location. It's probably a prestige symbol for some of them. But the fact is, they're affording it. So affordability is going up with the middle class. And definitely that middle class, if we were to cater to them, otherwise what would happen is the $40 billion demand that we are talking about will shrink. Because with the rupee depreciating at pace at which it's depreciating, the affordability in terms of buying those products will come down. So obviously, which means that the demand itself for that the electronic products will come down. So therefore, we need to innovate to address the middle class requirement. And finally, there's also a large number of Indian population who are not accessing the good things that are happening because of technology. Number of products are inaccessible to them. They're outside the so-called consumer that we have. Take the example of an ECG machine. An ECG machine which is made by some of the well-known best players at $100,000 today. Means it's about $200 it'll mean to take one ECG for each patient. Cost is not affordable. More importantly, you can't take this machine to a small village which is say 200 kilometers away from Bangalore. Or even if you take it there in a bus and make sure that there is, it can still be operated, do we have power there on a continual basis to operate the machine? Or thereafter, do we find enough technicians to stay back with that machine to operate it? So therefore, there have to be ways and means by which we need to innovate to ensure that we can bring the non-consumers today into the fold of consumers. Then I'll talk the contra of what I said earlier, not the $400 billion. There's a possibility it can be even higher than the $400 billion in terms of demand. So what do we need to do if we want to innovate is that we need to bring in this culture of innovation in this country. Today, I mean, we can go ahead and start becoming defensive and blame many people around, saying that our society itself is not innovation-driven. We're a very conservative society. People don't allow us to take risks. Risk-taking ability is very low. But the fact is, only when you do these, question the status quo, start taking risks, work as teams, become open, only then the innovation will come in. And these are not rocket sciences. These are something that we can do right from our schools. So innovation has to be a culture. And then the second one is that these innovations, if they have to become larger, we need to make some of these centers of excellence with emerging technologies. I would definitely confess that there are some initiatives that are happening in this area. For example, you look at what we recently launched from NASSCOM, DIET, that's Department of Electronics and Information Technology, is a center of excellence for IoT in Bangalore. We need to get some of those